Well, hello and welcome to In the Growth Space. I'm David. I'm your host. Really glad that you've joined me here once again. I've got a really great episode for you here today, a really great conversation with a leader that I think you're going to really enjoy. And before we do that, though, I just want to invite you to go out to your podcast app and rate and review In the Growth Space. It would mean the world to me. We really want to be able to reach more leaders. We want to help more leaders to be able to grow, develop, and be everything that they can be. And we can only do that if more people know about the podcast. So I'd love for you to go out and rate and review the podcast. Also, let me just share a little bit about what we have going on here at Impact Leadership Consulting, because we have a brand new approach to developing leaders, and we have a new program called the Emerging Leader Academy. It's coupled with the Emerging Leader Inner Circle. You've probably heard me talking about that if you have been around here for any length of time. The Emerging Leader Inner Circle essentially is a development program that puts leaders into a safe space where we meet most of the year online in Zoom. And then once a year, we get together in a summit where we are able to really crystallize everything that we've learned from the year. And so what I decided to do was to create something called the Emerging Leader Academy that will supplement that growth program and really give all of the teaching lessons that I had done and have done in the Emerging Leader Inner Circle. So I'd love for you to check that out. There's going to be in the show notes a link to the Emerging Leader Academy, and I'd love for you to check that out. If you are preparing any of your leaders for their growth path, or maybe you are preparing for succession, maybe you're a senior leader and you're wanting to leave the business, or perhaps you're looking to make the next level of growth in your own career path, and you want to prepare your next level leaders for that succession. It's a great way to do that because we talk about all kinds of things like communication, emotional intelligence, how to create a presentation, how to think and talk on your feet. Maybe you are wanting to grow your company. It's a great way to do that as well as really building a cohesive team, because we've had teams go through this program and it really creates an environment to create that cohesive team. So I just want to invite you to go out to the Emerging Leader Academy link that'll be in the show notes and check it out. We'd love to invite you. We do have an amazing holiday offer going on right now, and you can check that out on the landing page for the Emerging Leader Academy. So right now, we are going to be sharing a growth journey for a leader who I think you're going to really, really enjoy. It is something just a little bit different because it's growth around not only a leader's growth path, but also one of the things that he and his organization is doing. It's a nonprofit organization. And it's an amazing organization, I think, and it's around giving and connecting and community. And at this time of year, I think it's just an appropriate way to be able to engage in growth and expanding our mind around community and connection. So let me introduce you to Derek. Derek DeVelder is the executive director of the nonprofit organization called Abounding Service. And what Abounding Service does is it brings refugees and Americans together through English, citizenship, and really where refugees proudly volunteer to serve those in need in Phoenix. What a cool idea, right? And Derek infuses facilitation based in the Xchange Approach, something that I'm super familiar with. As a matter of fact, that's where Derek and I have met. We met in the community called Xchange. And so he uses this approach to help refugees and Americans alike to really all give, receive, and experience belonging together in community. He's really big on community. I think you'll get that here in just a moment as well. And he designs these connective experiences and welcome conversations, as he likes to call them. He brings these into board meetings, into fundraising events, English classes, online workshops, and debrief meetings after refugees volunteer to serve people in need. It's just really a cool thing that he's doing, and a cool way that he is helping refugees and Americans really integrate and create community. Now, throughout his prior journey as an arts management fellow at the Kennedy Center and his work in marketing and fundraising in the performing arts, Derek has had the joy of living his own art as a professional symphony double bass player, and he currently performs with the Arizona Opera. How cool is that? So he's a professional musician as well as an executive director, a leader of a nonprofit organization. He is such a great gentleman. I think you're going to really love this conversation. Derek and his wife, and she's a harpist as well. His wife is a harpist. So his wife, Lynn, and his engaging 8-year-old son, Lewis, all live in Chandler, Arizona. So enjoy this conversation. I just would love for you to share it with somebody who would also enjoy hearing this conversation with Derek. Let's go ahead and get into that right now. Well, hey, Derek, welcome to In the Growth Space, man. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today.
David, as a listener, it's an honor. It's an honor to be here today. Thank you.
It's so cool that you are a listener, and we're getting to have this conversation too. It's always fun to be able to, to talk to somebody who's been on the other side, because so oftentimes it feels like on this side of the microphone, it feels like a one-way conversation, which that's not too fun. And so to be able to have you here and for me to really introduce you to the listeners and the audience is really a joy. And I'd love for people to understand and have you talk through just your growth journey, because I know that you've gone on a growth journey, both personally and professionally. And I would love to hear that. Kind of take us back and where did it all start?
Fantastic. It started. I was a career bass player, symphony orchestra bass player.
I love that.
20 years, and I love it. I still do. I still play. I play with the Arizona Opera right now.
That's so cool.
That's my night job.
That's so cool.
It's my night job.
I love it. I love it. Fantastic.
And sitting in the pit, when I was in the pit, the pit's a good place, in the orchestra pit, right. Sitting in the pit just with that sound and the energy and focus, white hot focus wrapped all around me. Like there's nothing like it right in that moment. And then when I'm looking up at the stage lights and looking out toward the audience and those lights, like looking beyond, there's something more. I was called to more. Yeah. There's something more. And that more was like, I wanted to connect people to that, to that thing I was experiencing viscerally. I wanted to connect them more. And that more was in relationships. Like, how am I talking to people? How can we do this? How can we help the orchestra, which got me into, of course, marketing,
sure.
Arts management. So where do I get behind the bus and push? Because I love that bus and it's really important. And which then that got me into, ways to get better at it and communities to get better at it. So I had the privilege of being an arts management fellow at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts through their arts management fellowship program.
That's so cool.
And it was remarkable. And working in the different areas in ballet and orchestra in their marketing department. And then I came back and was finding my place in different arts organizations where I could fit in, where I could help.
Yeah.
And so I had that drive and that heart and that excitement. And
cool.
and the passion. And over the years, had a really, really great job. And what I didn't realize was I was white knuckling it.
Oh, yeah.
As far as the tools, as
Mm.
far as the leadership tools, as far as
Yeah.
my own personal productivity tools.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
and and at a point, they restructured my position, which is a euphemism for I got
Yeah,
fired.
right.
Now,
Totally understand that.
they have what they have. I owned what I owned. I learned from it. It happened for me, not to me.
100%. Yeah.
Um,
That's
and so
great.
when we talk about people's leadership develop, their growth path,
Yeah.
my question as I reflect on my own is, cool, where was your crash?
Yeah, right, right.
And I asked, where was that was my crash.
Right.
And so I remember going back and reflecting on that, like what happened and what levers could I pull? What could I
Mm.
do to grow through that so it didn't happen again, but also get better from it
Right.
and get that resilience. So I remember like typing in productivity, and the first thing that came up was this awesome organization called Asian Efficiency, led by Tan Pham and his team.
Oh my
And
gosh.
they have a podcast series and products. And so I got into that. I was listening to that and and doing their products, which got me into. So David, you talked about in a recent podcast that you gave about the path of podcasts.
Mm.
In my path, and I'll just do a quick run through that.
Sure, sure.
So that got me AE got me into GTD. For those of you
Yeah.
getting
Getting
things
things
done,
done. Yeah,
the
right.
stress-free art of productivity by David Allen, and that system, which really, really helped give me those tools in the mindset.
Yeah.
But it's super, super practical to be able to do that,
Mm.
which got me into, of course, Patrick Lencioni's great work.
Yes.
And then his later on, his working genius, which was like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, that's it.
Yes. Working Genius is awesome.
My working frustration of ideas, like I can't be a leader. I don't have, I just, and yet, did I have the permission from organizations to use my geniuses
Mm.
of galvanizing and enablement?
Mm-hmm.
And right now I'm in galvanizing mode,
Sure,
man.
sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
And when I work, it's the enablement, helping you meet your goals on your terms.
Yeah.
That got me into Donald Miller, building a story brand,
Mm.
which got me into Ian Morgan Cron and his work with the Enneagram.
Yeah.
And then that journey into, here's the box that I'm in, and here's a path to get out of that box as an Enneagram 9 social subtype, for those of you who are into that.
Yeah, sure.
It has been and still is
Yeah.
and will be very, very useful for my own development.
What part of so you mentioned community, and
Mhm.
I would love to just invite you to tell the listeners a little bit about the part that community played in your own growth journey, because I think the thing that you and I both know that is that community is where, I'll just say where it's at. I mean, for me anyway, it's in those communities where we grow the most, and I think that that's where you and I met. We met in the Xchange community, and I'd love to just kind of hear maybe from your perspective what it was about community that helped you to grow, or maybe that supercharged your growth.
Yeah. So that question that you asked, where is community?
Yeah.
Where is it?
Yeah, right.
Well, I started reading John Maxwell books that
Sure.
first, when I got into those jobs, and I did it and it was really useful, but I didn't have the community piece. I did the Asian Efficiency and the Donald Miller and the Michael Hyatt, and I didn't have the community piece. And then I was listening to Pete Vargas in his podcast, and it didn't have the community piece. And then Pete Vargas had a deal where I got introduced to the Xchange community.
Nice.
And then I got into that first 101 free workshop. That's exchangeapproach.com with no E.
Yep.
The first button is free workshop. do it. I got in. Why is it? What kind of like social magic is happening here that I felt like I belong, that I'm seen and I'm heard within the first 15 minutes of that workshop?
Yeah.
90 people on the call. And that led me into what might be possible if I was connecting with these people more. And they gave a path, a very clear path for community where people give and receive value and belong. Because what do we do with belonging? It's like, that's great. That's cool. But it's the giving and receiving. And in that community, I met Polly, and Polly has been that accountability.
Sure.
You know, she would meet with me every 2 weeks. And we'll talk about this later.
Yeah,
But
sure.
She's like, okay, where's this workshop you're going to be doing? Is it calendared? That's great. I'll help you with the tech. I'll help.
I love it.
And then she
That's a
introduced me
coach.
to you.
That's a coach.
And so I had a peer coach, and it's the peers, and it's going to those, going to the online events, but going to the in-person events too.
Yeah.
David, you had a great interview with Andy Hall. And Andy Hall had mentioned going twice a year across the Atlantic to John Maxwell gatherings, and his friends were like, why are you doing
this? Yeah.
Why are you doing this? Did you not get it the first 2 times? Why are you going back? And that what he said about that, what he receives from the other people and what he gives to the other people in that community, like, oh, that's what, like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the thing, David.
Well, and it's, I think what I hear you saying is really it's the power of the community, the collective, that really unlocks the things that are within us to be able to really flourish and to be able to be everything that God created us to be. And I think that it's one thing to have leadership tools like books and podcasts and growth opportunities and seminars and webinars. But it's another thing to be able to go to a place and have other people speak into you, listen to you, ask you good questions. It's that process of interacting with other human beings that I think it's just brilliant. And I never used to think that when I was younger. I don't know about you, but when I was younger, it was all about, kind of pulling yourself up by the bootstraps and, being a self-made man or a self-made person. And, and I just, in the world that we live in right now, that's just absolutely not possible. It's, the world is going and growing and expanding so fast that we as humans, I don't think can keep up. We just need each other.
100%, David.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
One of the questions I'd love to circle back on, Derek, is you talked about some low points in your life, and it seemed to me that when you were sharing that, it was in those low points that you really found your growth points, and that was really where you got stretched, you became resourceful. And I'd love to be able to have you share a little bit more about that, because so oftentimes I think as we, this is the In the Growth Space podcast, it sounds all great, but growth is not easy and it's not fun sometimes, and it hurts and it's tough. So talk a little bit about that process of where you were in your low points and, how you had to kind of move through that, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. And I remember packing up my stuff after getting called into the office, coming back to the office and having my email canceled and everything was gone. And I was like putting things in the boxes, putting them in my car, and finally driving back home down a long road with my coat rack over my shoulder in my Corolla wagon.
Love it.
And that long ride, and I was broken.
Yeah,
I was broken, and a lot of it was, what could I contribute, and did I belong?
Yeah.
And we keep coming back to that peace and community. And when those things are taken away, what does that mean? And I was processing through that, and a way of processing through that and contributing at the same time is my dad had founded an organization um, that serves adult refugees. So folks from Burma who fled from Burma, Afghanistan, Ukraine, Congo, um, and they work with one-on-one volunteers. He calls them encouragers. This was,
Cool.
15 years. He started it 15 years ago, and he said, "Hey, Derek, you're coming out to play an opera. Why don't you come and visit? Why don't you come and volunteer?" And what we do is, I sat down with a man named Muta. I'm going to pull him.
Yeah.
I'm going to pull Muta up.
Love it. Yeah, for those of you who are on YouTube, you get the chance to see it. If you're only listening to the podcast, go to YouTube and check this out so you get a chance to see him.
I'll
awesome.
describe it.
Yeah.
So Muta was very earnest. And he had these pop bottle glasses, and he would lean forward into the computer. We're using computers as we're going through Rosetta Stone, and I would help with pronunciation, context. And I remember after about 45 minutes, and Muta was really focusing in, and he turned to me and he looked at me and he said, Are you a teacher?" And I said, "Yes, Muta, I am." Yeah. "Why do you ask?" And he said, "Because you are helping me."
Oh, how sweet. That's great.
And I said, "No, Muta, you are helping me." And right then, Muta showed me that I could contribute.
Love that.
That I could belong. With Muta, I belonged.
Wow.
And Muta helped me in my path, and also gave me that added purpose. And over the years, I started volunteering, working more and more with my dad. And I remember being at a conference of organizations, faith-based organizations that help refugees integrate into the United States and Canada. And I was struggling with whether or not to go into this, because that would mean leaving a lot of orchestral work where I lived in Albuquerque. It was a big step in moving my family, my wife, and our son to Phoenix.
Yeah.
And I remember this David, you talk about people speaking into us, like speaking wisdom into us. I remember this man just very calmly looking me in the eye, and he said, "Remember, or Frederick Buechner, he's a theologian, and he said about calling, he said, the place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's hunger meet."
That's good.
And I just,
yeah.
And I'm like, that's it. That's my deep gladness, and where the world's hunger meet is to join my dad as executive director of Abounding Service.
Very cool.
And all of these pieces, all of this came along with, right? It's all part of the journey. And some, a lot of the learnings and the highs and the lows and all that. But really where it really started landing and really locking in is that piece of community. Like, I needed more than, okay, I'm working with volunteers and our adult refugee friends and my dad and the staff and the board. It was Xchange, where I was learning these ways of, how can we bring out the best of us when we gather? That question. And the community speaking into that.
That's so great. That's so great.
Mm-hmm.
You've had some community members speak into you and really help you in that process. And I guess talk a little bit about what that has meant and how has that helped you to further your mission at Abounding Service.
I think a lot about, what we experience at Xchange, either in online gatherings or in person, is is a way to experience that connection,
Mm-hmm.
that way to experience the community, the way to even engage with the content.
Yeah.
Um, is we can talk all day long about what an orange tastes like.
Yeah.
You know, I've done it for years about talking about what we, our work at Abounding Service with refugees.
Yeah.
Um, and through that, through those voices, through hearing John, through hearing other people in the community, um, I saw a way, and they showed me a way that people could taste the orange,
Mm. Yeah.
and that's, like in their facilitation 101, you taste the orange
Right.
and you go, oh, this.
Mm.
In that methodology, based in appreciative inquiry, based in all these scientifically based approaches that engage the whole person, the head and the heart.
Yeah.
And we could, without going into all of that, I know what an orange tastes like. That,
Yeah.
and they, through design, through meeting, through communicating, through me presenting to a group and getting feedback about what works,
Mm-hmm.
we were able to create the, you talk about going from strength to strength.
Yeah.
We created the What's Working workshop.
Cool.
So this is in addition to the 6 other English classes that we teach. This is not an English class.
Okay.
It's both in person and it's online.
Cool.
And we co-created it with the Tuesday night class
I love it.
and the volunteers. And we're looking for a way to take what we say in class. We see the relationships in class. It's a light.
Mm-hmm.
When we have a connection of one-on-one, we call them welcome conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Each conversation that we have with a one-on-one or one-on-two, like a small group, that's a meaningful connection. That's we call that a welcome conversations, and we are tracking that.
Okay. Yeah.
By the time this podcast airs, we'll have well over 10,000 welcome conversations since January of this year.
Wow.
And what remember back at that podcast, the first one of this season, when John talks about the ripples. What about those ripples of impact, of meaning, of meaningful connections? And that's this. And what can we do to invite other people and bring them in? In class, we talk about it, bringing that light and turning that into a lighthouse, and beaming that out and drawing in and attracting people, not pushing out to them, but drawing them in and inviting them in to come and taste the orange, that orange of meaningful connection. And for the YouTube crowd,
Yeah. I love it. I love it.
this is what it looks like. So the idea was to do it totally online. In the class, the Tuesday night class, we have like 18 students.
Wow.
They're like, no, we don't want to leave. We want to stay in class.
Okay.
And so we all have computers.
Nice.
So we turned it. So it's a little bit of like audio. It can be audio mayhem.
I'm sure. Yeah.
They all fire up the same Zoom meeting. So we're all in the same Zoom meeting.
Oh, wow.
And we, this is a very, very typical Xchange design. We join in, people online join in, all the people in class join in. We give our introductions, or we say, we say hello, welcome people in. We go through some of the basics of Zoom. Mm-hmm. Which for a lot of Americans too, it's like, hey, oh, that's really helpful. Thank you for showing me those things.
Yeah, sure.
And then we invite them into a question to consider and write it down. Write down these words. Last night we just had one. Why is it important that you chose to come to class today? Mm-hmm. Why is it important for you? Why is it important for your family, for your church, for your community? And the volunteers, they have their own reasons. And it's important for the volunteers to hear the students and the students to hear the volunteers. And I remember, we did that, and then we got them into breakouts of groups of 3. Some 2, some 4. And then the room behind me just like erupted because I was in the space. And they're all in their breakouts, and connecting. And then we brought it back and then had people raise their digital hands to share what they had talked about or somebody else talked about.
That's cool.
And the heart that's in it about why.
Mm.
And, for example, Ding from Burma, sharing why it's important. It's important for her and her relationship with her daughter because she can go to a parent-teacher meeting and not have an interpreter and talk to the teacher herself.
Wow, yeah, that's great.
Jasinge from Congo talked about how important it is to speak with his doctor.
Yeah.
Like without an interpreter, and what that means and that their voices matter. And to bring in other people to hear the voices of their stories because of the gifts that our adult refugees, their journeys. David, you talk a lot in this podcast about resilience.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are the people, this group,
they're resilient.
To unlock those stories, those ideas, those reflections. Can I just stand by Lisa from the Congo and borrow some of her faith, some of her resilience?
Wow.
We talk about the power of proximity, about being around people you want to emulate. I'm around them.
That's so cool.
We get to be around them.
Yeah.
And with this workshop, we can invite people in from anywhere to be in proximity.
That's cool. So anybody
that's a gift from Xchange.
Yeah, that's awesome. So anybody who is listening to this podcast, if they wanted to participate and just volunteer some night and jump on to this workshop, I'm sure you probably have a schedule, but they would be able to do that. And they would be able to be with and connect with these refugees. And is that what I'm understanding? Okay, all right.
Absolutely.
That's so cool.
Absolutely.
And I gotta believe too that this all of these like normal, regular, everyday interactions that you're facilitating, they help. Does probably two things in my mind. Number one, it connects Americans, people who are here in this country, to these refugees and helps them to understand their plight. But then it also helps the refugees practice their English and in a very practical way, which I think is so cool. I mean, interacting with Americans, getting to hear it, think about it, and in a safe environment. I think that's really, really, really cool.
That's exactly it, David. And that safe environment, and the psychological safety that is built and worked and earned and designed into of, can I be myself and belong here?
Yeah.
And with that comes what you're talking about with the English language acquisition, and the confidence that comes from the productive skills. So that's writing and speaking.
Right.
English is so much more than, do you like tomatoes? Yes, I like tomatoes.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
That's important. Yeah. But it's the speaking, and that their words matter, their contribution, their experiences, and what Americans can receive and gain from that. We need their words. We need their context. And as a person of faith, we need their faith expression and their journeys.
Right on. Yeah.
The value and the meaning of that is profound for all of us together in community.
Well, and Derek, I think that one of the things that I think about when I hear your story and the work that you're doing at Abounding Service, I think that it's so great on so many levels, and I think that one of the levels that it's really helping is it's helping those of us who are here in the United States to get exposed to other cultures, other perspectives, because they've lived another experience. I mean, obviously they're refugees, so they're coming from an experience that has not been pleasant, and they're running away from something. They're coming away from something. You mentioned like Afghanistan and places like that, Burma, where there's all of this uprising, and I have to believe that by that your volunteers are really growing themselves as well by getting these extra perspectives from these refugees. And I guess maybe talk a little bit about what you've seen there. Do you have any stories of your volunteers who have, heard one of these stories and just been, gone through their own growth journey through that.
Well, the first volunteer that comes to mind is me.
Sure, sure.
It changed my life.
I
I mean,
love it,
that path
man.
changed the trajectory of my life, my wife, my son.
Cool.
And those ripples. We've seen this with other volunteers who said, you know what, I'm gonna go teach English in Thailand.
Wow.
And or I'm going to start this program. There's another organization that utilizes our model. They trained with us, and now they're helping people in Phoenix and overseas. That's a really great question, and that is David, an example of community. That's a
Sure.
question I need to be asking more of, and want to
Oh,
be
nice.
asking more of, and
Yeah.
getting those stories of transformation from our volunteers.
Well, and I mean, just in hearing some of the stories that you've shared with me of some of these, these refugees, I mean, to me, it increases my faith and increases my belief that we all can benefit from hearing other people's stories. And I just think what you're doing is so fantastic because it allows people to do that. And, here I am in Pittsburgh and you're in Arizona, and I could interact with refugees in Arizona who came from Burma, they came from Afghanistan, they came from Africa, all of these other places. And it's like I get to travel and experience these cultures without traveling. And so
Yes.
I think the workshop that you're doing is so cool. Maybe just share a little bit about how do people get involved? How do people, like, if they want to join this workshop and just have an experience some evening with your refugees? How would they go about doing that?
Go to aboundingservice.org. Aboundingservice.org. Contact, reach out to me. I'll answer it personally. Um, that's the way in. Uh, you can volunteer. You can just check it out. David, there's a caveat, man. Video on, video on,
Yes,
video on
right
for
on.
these meetings,
Yeah,
right?
there's no hiding, right?
Right.
Exactly.
It's people. It's
Yeah,
people, people, people.
yeah,
You're gonna love it.
I love it.
Um, and and as we invite you in, you can check it out. If you want to share in the breakouts, great. It may take as much courage to not share.
Sure.
I have a feeling you might want to.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Um,
Yeah.
but to be able to check it out that way, as we're getting into, the December giving season, of course,
Yes.
we're a 501(c)(3).
Right on.
So there are different ways to give financially.
Hmm.
Your IRA, um, qualified charitable
Contributions.
distribution
Yeah,
for,
yeah.
if you know,
Right.
for those of you of a certain
I
age,
love it.
it's a powerful way, or $10 a month, like that range
Hmm.
to make that kind of impact,
It's really good.
is powerful.
Yeah.
David, there's something else I really want to get this
Please.
in,
Yeah,
because I
sure.
realize that, like, in all the What's Working workshop, it's a way for our refugee friends to give.
Okay.
Like, they're giving, when you come in, they will give you their total attention. You will be seen, you will be heard, and they will hold space for you. Like, that's service? So we could, our name, Abounding Service. Um, the vision is to see the marginalized empowered to do what? To serve others. And so a way we do that is through the What's Working workshop. And another way we do that is our refugee friends and our volunteers, we go together and we go to organizations like St. Vincent de Paul
Okay. Cool.
and go and serve the homeless there.
Mm.
We go to a shelter, and it's what they do. It's not doing the food tray distribution, which is important.
Sure.
It's sitting down with the residents and listening to their stories. And our refugee friends say, I see you, I hear you.
Yeah, cool.
And they hold space because they have understanding They have context for food insecurity. They understand the context of homelessness. And they can listen and not try to fix a resident. And they can sit with the discomfort. And we've seen that over and over and over of the gifts that our refugee friends have for people right here in the Phoenix area and online.
Wow, I love that. So not only are you helping these refugees, but you're plugging these refugees in and showing them how they can be a part of the greater community as well. And so it's almost like you're multiplying the effect of your organization by doing that. That's really, really cool. I love that. Tell me a little bit about how, so, you mentioned, obviously you guys are a 501c3. I'd love to just be able to share, how are you funded? Do you have individual donors? Do you have grants? Do you have corporations? Because I'd love for those of us who are listening to, participate. If this has struck a chord, I'd love for us to participate with you to share, especially in this season of giving that we're coming into right now. It'd be great to be able to find ways to just continue the goodness that you're putting out in the world, Derek. I love it.
Thank you so much, David. We really, it's really grassroots and heart-based. It's 80%, I'd say 80% individual donors. 20% foundation, and those foundations come from personal. Those are relationships too, right? They're people.
Yeah,
it's people.
Everybody is. Yeah.
We haven't received government funding since the pandemic.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
That's gone.
Yeah.
And it's about the relationships anyway. Right. It's about people. It's about their expression. And it's the contribution. Yes, it's the contribution, but it's also what it is we do this together.
Okay. Yeah.
It's us together. And that's an expression of it. The volunteerism is an expression of it. The prayers are an expression of it.
I love that.
So I appreciate your consideration of that, David.
Yeah, sure.
The audience, absolutely. I know this is an abundant community.
100%.
I've heard, the podcast of how people give, how I received, oh my gosh, what I received from Kim McKenna's, episode.
That's awesome.
How she said we heal through relationships.
Yeah.
And then you added we dream through relationships. We dream through community.
Yeah.
And you said community fuels growth.
So true.
And that's it.
Very
that's
true.
Abounding Service, what we do. Community fuels growth.
Love that.
And we do this together, and you emulate this, you embody this, David. This community embodies this.
That's so great, Derek. Man, I'm excited and thrilled to have, number one, met you, but also just the work that you're doing. I really think it's an important work, and it is about community, and we do grow through community, and that's really one of the reasons why I wanted to be able to have you on to share, because as a community, as a group of podcast listeners, we can have an impact on other human beings in places that we never even thought of. And so I love that. And so I would just want to encourage our community. So if you're listening right now and your heart is struck to contribute in some way, maybe you want to volunteer, from a distance. Maybe you're in the Arizona area and you want to plug in person. Man, just do that. Wherever you can plug in, and maybe you can't do any of that, but you can donate some good old, American greenbacks. Do that too, because I'm just thankful that there are organizations like yours, Derek, that will help people who are in need, and they're people who they have so much to offer, so much to give, and so much to share with the community and with the world. And so, yeah, I'm super grateful for you sharing your story and sharing what you guys do. Is there anything, as we kind of wrap up here, is there anything that you would like to share that you didn't get a chance to share in the conversation today?
The faith piece, man.
Yeah, right on.
the, why a lot of, many refugees come is their persecution
Yeah.
for their faith.
Mm.
Um,
Man.
and they come through different pathways, legal pathways, the U.S. Refugee Resettlement Program, through legal asylum process. And those are the immigration pathway structures. But what's driving is safety.
Oh yeah.
And what's carrying them through is faith.
Love it.
We see it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
We see it in our classes about the lived faith. And I mentioned Lisa from Congo.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, her smile. My dad was on a cancer journey. And it was not looking good. It's good now, but it is not looking good. And I was getting texts, and I would tell people, I'm getting texts from Teacher Gary. I am Teacher Gary's what? And they said his son. And I said, and you are Teacher Gary's what? And they would say family. And of course I would pray for Dad's recovery. And then Lisa came and she said, I prayed with my children last night for hours last night, face down on the floor with my children, that Teacher Gary would be standing in front of us holding the dry erase marker.
I love it.
And I just, at that time, just like, Lisa, may I just stand next to you and borrow some of your faith?
Yeah. Oh my
gosh. Like Paul says, it just,
100%.
It wasn't a thing I was thinking in my head. It was a soul moment where what they have to offer people of faith in the United States is just authentic. It's real. It's powerful. It's a way God is working in other parts of the world. That is a real profound gift. And
it's not
for
fake.
those of us in the United States who need that perspective.
Yeah.
And they live it and they bring it. And I look forward to leaning into this as we experience more of this. But it's what kind of humbling honor it's been for me to experience them as I get, in my own small way to journey, to be a part of that part of their journey. After their long journeys, to Singe's 15 years in a refugee camp before he came to the United States, where he was he went from house to house doing health services, and now he's here, and you'll probably see him if you do the Tuesday night working workshop. To Singe's there, and you get to say hi.
That's so cool.
And receive from him, and he'll sit with you and give you space. And hold space for you.
That is so cool that, I think one of the things that just hit me and struck me is that these refugees, they have been through so much, and yet their faith is so strong. And it's like what we were talking about earlier, where in those difficult moments, that's where we grow the most. And those aren't pleasant, man. And I think here in America, the crappy things that we go through, the little valleys that we go through, are nothing compared to Desinge's 15 years, in a refugee camp. And I mean, think about that, folks. I mean, 15 years in a refugee camp. I gotta believe that there were many times where he asked God, when's this going to end, or when will I get out of here? And all of those questions that we probably as humans normally ask. And I just am amazed by people like that. And in a lot of ways, I think that it would be really cool. And you get, front row seats to be able to sit beside somebody like that and really actually experience that kind of faith, that kind of belief. So that's really cool, Derek. I'm just super excited to hear your story. And tell me about playing for the symphony and for the opera, because I just love to be able to hear how often do you play, and what's that like being in the pit?
There's an immediacy to playing. I may play right now. It's a lot less. Before I would play, around the year, piecing work together with then the New Mexico Symphony and the New Mexico Philharmonic, the Santa Fe Symphony.
Yeah.
I had studied in Vienna and in Austria
Nice.
for 2 years. Studied music and at Peabody did a master's there.
Very cool.
And that journey of when I play that open A string on that bass, and I am beyond privileged to have a 200-year-old bass.
Wow.
And in Abraham Prescott, made in Deerfield, New Hampshire, around 1815.
Okay.
Um,
Wow. So is that kind of like the Stradivarius of basses? Is that?
It's a sought after bass.
Nice.
I mean, there are of course, English basses, French basses, Italian basses.
But this is American made.
Fine.
Huh?
It's American.
I love it. That's
and
cool.
it's 273 were made. And it's got a big organ pipe sound.
Nice.
So that immediacy of playing that, and I do this for now and I do this for me.
Cool.
And I love that immediacy.
Yeah.
And I'm also listening across the orchestra together with other people in real time, responding to, contributing to, and responding to, and making something bigger than I could ever be by myself, making something I could ever be with a small group, making something amazingly inspiring and massive in drawing us up and out of ourselves together in one moment. In the next moment, it's gone. Yeah. And 2,000 people in an orchestra hall experience that.
That's cool.
At the same time together. That's that through line of connection together, what we experience together. And in my way, I'm doing that, listening to myself, listening to others nearby, listening across, and then hearing that sound bounce off that back wall with 2,000 other people breathing into this.
It's like you're explaining, you're explaining generous listening as I'm hearing you talk about that in the context of music. I mean, you're generously listening to other musicians who are playing their parts, and then you're contributing that. And I just think that's awesome, man. Well, Derek, I thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing not only what you do, but your growth journey too. I really do hope you, as the listeners, were inspired by some of the stories that Derek shared, and I hope that you'll contribute in some way to Abounding Service, because I think it's really cool when we can contribute to other human beings in a very tangible way. Sometimes it's really easy to give money, but it's a little bit more difficult to give our time and our energy and a part of us. So I would just encourage you, if you can jump on those Tuesday calls, just to be able to experience it. I think that'd be really cool. So, Derek, where do people get in touch with you? We'll make sure that we put all of your contact information in the show notes, but where can people get in touch with you?
Perfect. aboundingservice.org. Hit the contact button. That's me.
Awesome, man. Awesome.
I'll take care of you.
All right. Derek, thank you again. I really appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you so much, David.